r/ProRevenge Catfish pretended to be Christian, so I exposed him at church. The notification sound from my phone should have been a comfort, another sweet message from David, the man I thought I was going to marry. Instead, my hands were shaking as I stared at the screenshot my roommate had just sent me. Bro, you should see this church girl I've got wrapped around my finger. Read the message from David's real Facebook account, not the sanitized Christian version he'd shown me. 6 months of Bible verses, and she's ready to drop out of college to move closer to me. These religious chicks are so easy. The responses from his friends were worse. Laughing emojis. Comments about their own projects, apparently what they called the women they targeted. And then the final blow, a photo of David kissing a woman in a wedding dress, posted just 8 months ago. He was married. I dropped my phone like it had burned me, my chest heaving as 6 months of lies crashed down around me. Every late-night video call where he'd quoted scripture. Every time he'd said he was praying for our relationship. Every conversation about how God had brought us together, how we were meant to be. All of it, every single word, had been a performance. Sarah? My roommate Jessica sat down next to me on my dorm bed, her face creased with worry. I'm so sorry. I found his real profile by accident when I was looking up that restaurant you two talked about visiting. I had to tell you. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. For 6 months, I believed God had answered my prayers for a godly husband. David seemed perfect, a 24-year-old youth pastor from a town 3 hours away, passionate about his faith, talking about mission work and building a Christian home together. We planned our entire future, a spring wedding, kids, growing old together in service to the Lord. I'd been so careful on the Christian dating apps. I'd prayed over every match, every conversation. My parents had always warned me about men who might take advantage of my faith, but David had seemed different. He knew scripture better than most pastors I'd met. He'd send me devotionals, pray with me over FaceTime, talk for hours about theology and God's plan for our lives. The worst part? I'd actually been planning to leave college. I'd filled out transfer applications to schools near his town, convinced this was God opening doors for love. My parents had been hesitant, but even they'd started to warm up to David after our video calls with him. He charmed everyone. Look at this, Jessica said softly, scrolling through more of his posts. He's got a whole system. He studies different churches' websites, memorizes their beliefs, even knows which Bible translations they prefer. And Sarah, you're not the first. She showed me photos of David with at least 3 other women over the past 2 years. All of them looked like me, young, modest, clearly religious. All of them looking at him with the same adoring expression I'd worn in our photos together. My phone buzzed with another text from fake David. Good morning, beautiful. Just finished my quiet time and was praying for you. Can't wait until we're reading scripture together every morning as husband and wife. Love you so much. Red heart. The casual cruelty of it made bile rise in my throat. How many hours had he spent crafting this persona? How many real tears had I shed over this fictional man? But as I sat there, surrounded by the wreckage of my dreams, something else began to build alongside the devastation. Rage. Pure, righteous fury that burned away the tears and sharpened my focus to a single, crystal clear purpose. David thought Christian women were easy targets? He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. I spent the next 3 days in what I can only describe as strategic prayer and fury. While David continued sending me his sickeningly sweet messages about God's plan for us, I was conducting my own investigation with the methodical precision of someone who'd grown up in a pastor's home. I knew how to research. His real name was David Mitchell, and he wasn't hard to find once I had his actual Facebook profile. He lived in Millbrook, worked at a marketing firm, and was indeed married to a woman named Claire. More disturbing, he was active in several online forums where men shared strategies for manipulating religious women. The screenshots Jessica had found were just the tip of the iceberg. I discovered posts where he detailed specific techniques, which Bible verses made women melt, how to fake prayer requests for sympathy, even which Christian dating apps had the most vulnerable targets. He turned deception into an art form, complete with different backstories for different denominations. For me, he'd been Presbyterian. For another girl, Methodist. For a third, Baptist. But here's what David hadn't counted on. My father wasn't just a pastor, he was a pastor who taught me that righteous anger was sometimes exactly what God called for. Jesus didn't gently ask the money changers to leave the temple. You're planning something, Jessica observed on Thursday evening, watching me type furiously on my laptop. That's your organizing the church fundraiser face. I'm not planning anything, I said, not technically lying. I was researching something. The planning would come later. My first breakthrough came when I found Claire's Instagram. She was a kindergarten teacher, loved hiking, and had recently posted about feeling distant from her husband. Her most recent post was a cryptic quote about discovering people aren't who you think they are. My heart pounded. Did she know? I spent an hour crafting a direct message to her, deleting and rewriting it dozens of times. How do you tell a stranger their husband has been emotionally cheating with multiple women while mocking their faith? Hi Claire, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think we need to talk about your husband David. I have information that's going to be hard to hear, but I think you deserve to know. Please call me when you're alone. I included my number and hit send before I could lose my nerve. She called 20 minutes later. Is this about the dating apps? Her voice was quiet, tired. My stomach dropped. You know? I suspected. Found some things on his computer last month, but he convinced me I was being paranoid. Said he was just researching for work. She laughed bitterly. Marketing research, he called it. Tell me, does he quote 1 Corinthians 13 to you? The love chapter? All the time, I whispered. That's his favorite. He practiced it in our bathroom mirror before our wedding, said it was the perfect way to make Christian girls emotional. The casual cruelty of that detail hit me like a physical blow. I'd cried the first time he'd recited those verses to me over video call. Claire, I need to ask you something, and I need you to hear me out completely before you answer. Okay. How would you feel about helping me make sure he never does this to another woman again? There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, stronger, sharper. What did you have in mind? I took a deep breath. Does David know where you go to church? He refuses to come with me. Says it's my thing. Perfect. Good. Because I think it's time David discovered what real faith looks like. The plan that formed over the next hour of conversation with Claire was both elegant and terrifying. David had spent months studying our faith to mock it, now we were going to use that knowledge against him. He's been researching Millbrook Community Church, Claire told me, her voice gaining strength with each word. I found it in his browser history along with other things. He knows Pastor Williams' sermons, our service schedule, even our recent prayer requests. I think he was planning to use me as his next authentic Christian reference. My blood ran cold. He's been planning this for months. Longer. I found a notebook where he'd written down details about different women, different churches. Sarah, you're number 7 that I could count. 7 women. 7 hearts broken, 7 faiths shaken. The weight of it made my chest tight with rage. Here's what we're going to do, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. You said he's been distant lately, making excuses not to spend time with you? Every weekend. Claims he's visiting his sick grandmother upstate. Perfect. This Sunday, you're going to have a crisis. Something big enough that he'd look like a monster for ignoring, but not so serious that you'd call 911. We spent another hour working out the details. Claire would text David Sunday morning saying she'd fallen down the stairs and thought she might have broken her wrist. Nothing life-threatening, but painful and scary enough that a caring husband would rush home from his fake grandmother visit. She'd ask him to meet her at the church. Pastor Williams' wife was a nurse, she'd say, and Claire was scared and needed someone she trusted to look at her injury before deciding on the hospital. But what if he just tells me to call an ambulance? Claire asked. He won't. He spent too much time crafting his image to risk looking callous. Plus, meeting at the church plays into his research. He'll think he's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The beauty of it was that David's own deception would trap him. He couldn't claim to be 3 hours away with a grandmother when his wife needed him. He couldn't refuse to come to a church he'd supposedly been researching for his schemes. But as Friday turned into Saturday, complications began piling up like storm clouds. First, David started pushing harder for our video call schedule. I miss seeing your beautiful face, he texted. Let's do an extra call tonight. I want to pray with you about something special. My stomach churned. After talking to Claire, every message from him felt like acid. But I couldn't break character, not when we were this close. Of course. Looking forward to its smiling face with smiling eyes, I replied, hating every emoji. Then Jessica dropped a bomb Saturday evening. Sarah, you need to see this. She showed me her phone with shaking hands. I've been monitoring his forums, and he posted something new. The blood drained from my face as I read David's latest post. Phase 2 with Church Girl starts tomorrow. Time to introduce some relationship challenges to really test her devotion. Thinking about faking a family emergency to see if she'll drive 3 hours to comfort me. These chicks always fall for the vulnerable act. Oh God, I whispered. He's planning to manipulate me tomorrow too. We stared at each other, the implications sinking in. David was going to try to lure me to him the same day Claire was luring him to church. If I didn't respond to his fake emergency, he'd get suspicious. If I did respond, I wouldn't be there for the confrontation. What are you going to do? Jessica asked. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Claire. We have a problem, she said without preamble. David just came home with flowers and dinner, saying he wants to reconnect this weekend. He's being unusually attentive. What if he doesn't take the bait tomorrow? My carefully constructed plan was falling apart, and we hadn't even started yet. But as I looked at David's latest message, sweet dreams, my beautiful future wife. Tomorrow's going to be a very special day, my resolve hardened. He was right about one thing. Tomorrow was definitely going to be special. I barely slept Saturday night, my mind racing through contingency plans and worst-case scenarios. Every few hours, my phone would buzz with another message from David, each one making my skin crawl more than the last. Can't sleep, thinking about our future together. God has such beautiful plans for us, sweetheart. If only he knew what God, and I, actually had planned for him. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzling, which felt appropriate for what was about to unfold. I was supposed to be at my own church in an hour, but instead I was driving 3 hours to Millbrook with Jessica riding shotgun for moral support. You sure about this? Jessica asked for the 10th time as we merged onto the highway. There are so many things that could go wrong. She wasn't wrong. Claire's husband could refuse to come. He could see through the trap. He could turn the whole thing around on us somehow. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered his posts about vulnerable targets and my resolve strengthened. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire, flowers on the kitchen table this morning with a note about new beginnings. I think he's planning something big. Still going through with it? Absolutely, I texted back. Stick to the plan. The plan we'd refined until 2 a.m. Claire would text David at 9:30 a.m. claiming she'd fallen down their basement stairs while getting Christmas decorations. She'd say her wrist was swelling and she was scared, but Pastor Williams' wife Nancy was a retired nurse who could look at it after service. Could he please meet her at the church? She'd be waiting in the fellowship hall. What Claire wouldn't tell him was that I'd already called Pastor Williams yesterday. That conversation had been terrifying in its own way. Pastor Williams had known my father for 20 years, had watched me grow up in the church. Explaining why I needed his help meant admitting how completely I'd been fooled. Pastor Williams, I need to tell you about something that's been happening, and I need your help stopping it. I'd laid out everything, David's real identity, the forum posts, the other women, Claire's discovery of his deception. Pastor Williams had listened in increasingly appalled silence. Sarah, this is spiritual abuse of the highest order. This man has weaponized faith itself. I know. And I want to make sure he can't do it again. What do you need from me? Now, 2 hours into my drive to Millbrook, I was about to find out if Pastor Williams would follow through on his promise to help. At 9:30 sharp, my phone rang. Claire. It's done, she said, and I could hear the tremor in her voice. I sent the text. Now we wait. How do you feel? Terrified. Excited. Like I'm about to throw up. She laughed shakily. Is that normal? Completely normal. You're incredibly brave, Claire. No, I'm incredibly angry. There's a difference. 10 minutes later, she called back. He responded. Oh no, baby, I'm so sorry. Leaving grandmother's right now, we'll be there as soon as I can. Love you. With crying emojis. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Even his fake concern was performed perfectly. But then my own phone started ringing. David. My heart hammered as I declined the call, but he immediately called back. Then again. Sarah, what's wrong? Jessica asked, seeing my face. He's calling me. This isn't part of the plan. A text came through, beautiful, I need to hear your voice. Having a family emergency and need your prayers. Oh my god, Jessica breathed, reading over my shoulder. He's actually doing it. He's trying to run his manipulation on you at the same time. Another text, my grandmother took a bad turn. Driving to the hospital now. Can you pray with me over the phone? I'm scared, Sarah. The audacity was breathtaking. He was literally driving to confront his wife about her fake injury while simultaneously trying to manipulate me with his own fake emergency. What are you going to do? Jessica asked. I stared at his messages, my mind racing. If I ignored him completely, he might get suspicious and not show up at the church. But if I engaged, I'd have to maintain the act while knowing everything I now knew about him. I'm going to pray with him, I said, my voice cold as winter. I'm going to give him exactly what he thinks he wants. Sarah. He wants to see how devoted his little church girl is? Fine. Let him hear what real faith sounds like when it's been betrayed. I called him back, and when he answered, his voice was perfectly crafted, shaky, vulnerable, designed to trigger every protective instinct he thought I had. Sarah, thank God. I'm so scared right now. Taking a deep breath, I prepared to give the performance of my life. Tell me everything, David. I'm here for you. Just like he'd taught me to be. The drive to Millbrook felt endless, made worse by David's increasingly frantic calls. Each conversation was a masterclass in manipulation that I now recognized for what it was. She's been unconscious for 20 minutes, he lied smoothly about his fictional dying grandmother. The doctors won't tell me anything because I'm not immediate family, but Sarah, I can see it in their faces. I don't think she's going to make it. I had to grip the phone tighter to keep my voice steady. I'm praying for you right now, David. God sees your pain. I keep thinking about what you said about God's timing, he continued, his voice perfectly calibrated to sound broken. What if he's calling her home right when we're planning our future together? What if this is a test of our faith? The sick irony wasn't lost on me. He was using my own words about faith and timing, conversations we'd had when I was genuinely opening my heart to him, and twisting them into tools for this elaborate lie. Where are you now? I asked, knowing full well he was probably pulling into the church parking lot. Still in the hospital waiting room. I might be here all day, maybe longer. I hate that this is happening right when we were supposed to have our long video call tonight. Jessica shot me a look from the driver's seat, shaking her head in disgust. Through the speaker, we could both hear how effortlessly the lies rolled off his tongue. But then something in his voice shifted. Sarah, can I ask you something? Hypothetically? My blood chilled. Of course. If someone you loved, someone you trusted completely, turned out to be not who you thought they were, how would your faith handle that? Like, would you forgive them? Would you believe people could really change? The question hit me like a slap. Was he having second thoughts? Testing whether I discovered his lies? Or was this just another layer of psychological manipulation, designed to make me feel sorry for him? David, that's a heavy question for right now. I know. It's just being here, thinking about mortality and truth and... I guess I've been wondering if I'm worthy of the love you've shown me. If any of us are really who we pretend to be. Jessica grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. She mouthed, what is he doing? Everyone has things they're not proud of, I managed, my heart hammering. But real love, godly love, it's about choosing to see the best in people. Even if they've done terrible things? Things that hurt people they claim to care about? The line went quiet except for the sound of a car door slamming in the background. He was there. He was actually walking into the church right now. David, Sorry, baby, I have to go. The doctor is calling me. Pray for us, okay? Pray that everything works out the way it's supposed to. The call ended, leaving Jessica and me staring at each other in stunned silence. What the hell was that? Jessica whispered. I don't know. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. Either he's having a crisis of conscience, or he's playing some game that's even more twisted than we thought. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire, he's here. Parked outside, just sitting in his car looking at the building. Sarah, I'm terrified. What if this backfires? What if he somehow turns this around on us? I checked the time. We were still 45 minutes out, and the Sunday service at Millbrook Community Church was about to begin. In less than an hour, David would walk into that sanctuary expecting to comfort his injured wife. Instead, he was about to face something no amount of manipulation could prepare him for. Drive faster, I told Jessica. Sarah. Please. Whatever game he's playing, whatever he's planning, we need to be there. Because something in that phone call had changed everything, and I couldn't shake the feeling that David knew exactly what was waiting for him inside that church. The last 15 minutes of our drive were pure agony. My phone had gone silent, no more calls from David, no updates from Claire, and somehow that felt worse than his constant manipulation. Maybe we should call Claire, Jessica suggested as we finally saw the Millbrook city limits sign. No. If David's with her now, a random phone call could blow everything. But my resolve was cracking with each passing mile. The confident anger that had sustained me through 3 days of planning was giving way to cold terror. What if I'd miscalculated? What if exposing him publicly just made me look as pathetic as he'd claimed religious women were? We pulled into the church parking lot at 10:47 a.m., and my heart stopped. David's car was gone. No. I was out of our car before Jessica had even turned off the engine, scanning the parking lot frantically. He was supposed to be here. Claire said he came. The church doors were closed, service had started. Through the stained glass windows, I could hear the congregation singing hymns, their voices carrying across the quiet parking lot like a mockery of my failed plan. Jessica grabbed my arm. Sarah, look. She pointed to the far corner of the lot where a silver sedan sat with its hazard lights blinking. Is that him? We crept closer, and through the windshield I could see a figure hunched over the steering wheel. As we got within 20 feet, the person looked up. David Mitchell. In the flesh, finally. He looked exactly like his real photos, not the carefully angled selfies from our video calls, but the candid shots I'd found on his actual social media. Older than he'd claimed, with lines around his eyes that spoke of 30-something years, not 24. His hair was thinner, his jawline softer. Even his clothes looked calculated, a button-down shirt and khakis that screamed respectable husband rather than the trendy outfits he'd worn in our calls. But it was his expression that made my blood freeze. He wasn't looking at the church with confusion or concern for his supposedly injured wife. He was staring directly at me with a smile that was equal parts triumph and malice. My phone buzzed. A text from David's number. Hello, Sarah. Fancy meeting you here. Jessica grabbed my hand, her grip tight enough to hurt. We need to leave. Right now. But I couldn't move. Couldn't process what was happening. How did he know I'd be here? How long had he known? Another text. Don't look so shocked, sweetheart. Did you really think you were the first girl to try the team up with a wife approach? Claire and I have been married for 5 years. We've gotten quite good at this. The world tilted sideways. Jessica, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Get in the car. What? Sarah, what's wrong? A third text, and this one made my knees buckle. Claire's in the church right now, probably telling Pastor Williams some very interesting stories about you. About how you've been stalking our family, making up lies about our marriage, harassing her online. Funny how easy it is to flip a narrative, isn't it? Oh God. The words came out as a choked sob. Oh God, they're working together. Through the church windows, I could see movement, people standing, turning toward the doors. Service was ending early. Sarah, we have to go now. Jessica was pulling me toward our car, but my legs felt like lead. David's car door opened. He stepped out slowly, theatrically, like he was savoring every second of my shock and horror. When he spoke, his voice carried across the parking lot with perfect clarity. You know what the best part is, Sarah? You did all the hard work for us. Finding my real social media, tracking down Claire, planning this whole elaborate revenge. You even called Pastor Williams yourself to set up today's meeting. The church doors opened, and people began filing out. I could see Pastor Williams in his Sunday robes, his face grim as he scanned the parking lot. Run, I whispered to Jessica, but it was already too late. Pastor Williams had spotted us, and he was walking over with the determined stride of a man who had something very serious to discuss. Behind him, looking appropriately upset and supported by 2 church ladies, was Claire Mitchell, playing the role of concerned, victimized wife to perfection. Pastor Williams approached us with the slow, deliberate walk of a shepherd protecting his flock from a perceived threat. Behind him, Claire clung to the arm of an older woman I recognized from the church website as the pastor's wife, the same Nancy who was supposed to be examining Claire's injured wrist. Miss Henderson? Pastor Williams called out, his voice carrying the authority of 30 years in ministry. I think we need to talk. My mouth went dry. Jessica's hand tightened on my arm, but I could feel her starting to pull away, instinctively distancing herself from whatever was about to happen. David leaned against his car, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with the satisfaction of someone who'd orchestrated every moment. When he caught my eye, he had the audacity to wink. Pastor Williams, I managed, my voice cracking. I can explain. I certainly hope so. His tone was gentle but firm, the same voice he'd probably used to counsel troubled teenagers and mediate church disputes. Mrs. Mitchell has shared some very concerning information about communications she's received from you. Claire stepped forward, and I had to admire her performance. Her eyes were red-rimmed as if she'd been crying, and she held her right wrist cradled against her chest. When she spoke, her voice trembled with just the right amount of hurt and confusion. I don't understand why you've been contacting me, she said, looking directly at me. The messages you sent about my husband, the accusations. Pastor Williams, I showed you the screenshots. They were so detailed, so cruel. My heart hammered against my ribs. That's not, I never said anything cruel. I was trying to help you. Help me? Claire's voice rose slightly, drawing the attention of other church members who were lingering near their cars. By telling me my husband was cheating? By claiming he was targeting religious women online? Why would you make up something so horrible? I didn't make it up. The words burst out of me louder than I intended, causing several people to turn and stare. I have proof. The forum posts, the screenshots. Screenshots can be faked, dear, Nancy said softly, her nurse's training apparently extending to crisis management. And Mrs. Mitchell showed us the messages you sent. Some of them were quite intense. Jessica squeezed my arm. Sarah, she whispered urgently, what messages is she talking about? That's when I realized how thoroughly I'd been played. David had access to Claire's phone, her social media accounts, everything. Whatever messages they were claiming I'd sent, he could have easily fabricated them. Worse, my real messages to Claire, the ones where I poured out my heartbreak and rage about his betrayal, could be edited and taken out of context to make me look unhinged. I need to see my phone, I said, pulling it out with shaking hands. My blood turned to ice. The message thread with Claire was gone. Completely erased from my phone. In its place was a new conversation that I definitely hadn't written, filled with increasingly frantic messages that made me sound obsessed and delusional. How is this possible? I breathed, staring at the screen. David's voice cut across the parking lot, perfectly pitched to sound concerned rather than smug. Pastor Williams, if I may? Sarah's been going through a difficult time lately. We met on a Christian dating app, had a few conversations, but when I told her I was married, she didn't take it well. More people were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. I recognized several faces from the church's website, deacons, Sunday school teachers, pillars of the community who would carry this story throughout Millbrook and beyond. That's a lie, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. We talked for 6 months. He told me he loved me, that we were going to get married. Sarah, Pastor Williams said gently, I understand you're upset, but making accusations like this. Call my father, I interrupted desperately. Pastor James Henderson from First Presbyterian in Oakville. He'll vouch for me. He'll tell you I'm not some crazy stalker. But even as I said it, I realized how this would sound to my father. His daughter, driving 3 hours to confront a married man at his church, causing a public scene based on what everyone here would view as fabricated evidence. Claire stepped closer, her performance reaching its crescendo. Sarah, I don't know what David said to you during those few conversations, but he's a good man. We've been happily married for 5 years. He would never do the things you're claiming. She held up her phone, showing what appeared to be our message thread. But the messages displayed there weren't the ones I remembered sending. These were accusatory, bitter, filled with threats and delusions that made me sound completely unhinged. I never wrote those, I whispered, but I could see doubt creeping into Pastor Williams' eyes. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. That's when I realized the true genius of their trap. They hadn't just planned to humiliate me, they'd engineered a situation where any reaction I had would only prove their narrative. If I stayed calm, I looked guilty. If I got emotional, I looked unstable. If I kept insisting on my version of events, I looked delusional. Jessica tugged at my sleeve. Sarah, we should go. But David wasn't finished with his masterpiece. Pastor Williams, he called out, his voice heavy with reluctant concern, there's something else you should know. David's words hung in the air like a sword about to fall. The gathered crowd leaned in closer, their faces a mixture of concern and barely concealed curiosity. I felt like a specimen under a microscope, every expression analyzed, every breath judged. Sarah has been struggling with some personal issues lately, David continued, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. Mental health challenges that have affected her perception of reality. My world tilted. What are you talking about? Claire stepped forward again, her performance flawless. She mentioned in her messages that she'd been seeing a counselor for episodes. Times when she couldn't distinguish between what was real and what she'd imagined. That's not, I started, but Jessica's sharp intake of breath cut me off. Sarah, she whispered urgently, your therapy sessions. The ones you mentioned to David during your calls. The blood drained from my face. Months ago, during one of our late-night conversations, I confided in David about seeing a college counselor for anxiety attacks I'd been having about my future. It was normal stress counseling that half the students on campus utilized, but in David's hands, that vulnerable admission had become ammunition. I was seeing a counselor for normal college stress, I said loudly, desperately trying to clarify. Not for, what you're implying isn't true. But I could see the damage spreading across the faces around me. Pastor Williams' expression had shifted from concern to pity. The church members were exchanging meaningful glances. In their minds, the puzzle pieces were clicking into place. Unstable college girl fixates on married man, fabricates elaborate conspiracy when rejected. We're very concerned about her, David continued, stepping closer to Claire in a show of protective solidarity. Claire has been losing sleep over this situation. We've been praying for Sarah, hoping she gets the help she needs. The audacity was breathtaking. He turned my genuine mental health maintenance into evidence of instability, weaponized my trust against me, and somehow positioned himself and his accomplice wife as the victims. Show them the forum posts, I demanded, pulling out my phone with shaking hands. I have screenshots of everything he wrote about targeting religious women. But when I opened my photo gallery, my stomach dropped into my shoes. The screenshots were gone. Every single piece of evidence I'd carefully collected had vanished from my phone. That's impossible, Jessica breathed, looking over my shoulder at the empty folder. David's smile was subtle but unmistakable. Technology can be tricky when someone's under stress, he said gently. Sometimes we think we've saved things that were never really there. Pastor Williams approached me with the careful movements of someone dealing with a potentially unstable person. Sarah, I think it would be best if you came inside. We can call your parents, maybe contact your school's counseling services. No. The word came out sharper than I intended, causing several people to take a step back. This is exactly what he wants. Can't you see he's manipulating all of you the same way he manipulated me? But my desperation was only strengthening their narrative. Every protest made me look more unhinged, every piece of missing evidence more suspicious. Claire pulled out her phone. Maybe we should call the police, she said quietly to her husband. If she drove 3 hours to confront us, I'm worried about what she might do next. The threat was clear, keep pushing this, and face legal consequences for harassment and stalking. Jessica grabbed my arm firmly. Sarah, we need to leave. Right now. For the first time since this nightmare began, she was absolutely right. But as I started backing toward our car, David called out one final twist of the knife. Sarah, wait. His voice was gentle, concerned, perfectly calibrated. I want you to know that, Claire, and I forgive you. We'll be praying for your healing. The crowd murmured approvingly at his Christian grace, completely unaware they'd just witnessed a masterclass in psychological warfare. The drive away from the church passed in stunned silence. Jessica kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, probably waiting for me to have a complete breakdown, but I felt eerily calm. Like I was floating somewhere above my body, watching this happen to someone else. Sarah, she finally said as we reached the highway, what just happened back there? How did they? They'd done this before. My voice sounded flat, mechanical. This whole thing, it's not just catfishing. It's something bigger. What do you mean? I stared out the window, pieces clicking together in my mind with horrible clarity. Think about it. The fake social media profiles I found, they were too easy to discover. David's real Facebook account that led us to Claire? He wanted me to find that. Jessica pulled over at a rest stop, her hands shaking as she turned off the engine. You think this was all planned? From the beginning. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the messages that had somehow appeared in my thread with Claire, messages I'd never written, but that perfectly painted me as an obsessed stalker. He needed someone to play the crazy ex-girlfriend. I fit the profile perfectly. The more I thought about it, the more horrifying it became. David hadn't just been catfishing me for entertainment, he'd been grooming me to be the villain in some twisted performance. Every vulnerable detail I'd shared, every expression of love and trust, had been carefully catalogued for future use against me. But why? Jessica asked. What's the point of such an elaborate setup? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Jessica warned, but I was already swiping to accept. Sarah? The voice was young, female, scared. My name is Amanda. I found your number online and I think we need to talk. My blood chilled. About what? About David Mitchell. And what happened to you today at that church? Her voice cracked. Because the same thing happened to me 6 months ago. Jessica leaned closer so she could hear. Amanda's story poured out in a terrified rush. Another Christian college student, another months-long online relationship, another elaborate setup that ended with public humiliation at her own church when she tried to expose David's lies. They had screenshots of messages I never sent, Amanda whispered. Made me look like a crazy stalker. My pastor had to ask me to leave the congregation until I got help. My parents still think I had some kind of breakdown. How many others? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. I found 3 so far. Girls who reached out after I started posting on support forums, trying to warn people. Sarah, I think they're running some kind of long-term operation. Like they pick targets, build elaborate emotional connections, then systematically destroy their credibility. Jessica grabbed the phone. But why? What do they get out of it? Control. Power. Proof that they're smarter than everyone else. Amanda's voice hardened. And I think they might be documenting it. Selling the footage or photos to those forums where men share stories about manipulating women. My stomach lurched. All those video calls with David, where I'd been emotional, vulnerable, trusting. Had you been recording them? Were there people online right now watching my heartbreak as entertainment? Amanda, I said carefully, what happened to the other girls? The ones who tried to expose him? One transferred schools. Another left her church entirely, moved back in with her parents. The third. She paused. The third disappeared from social media completely. I haven't been able to find any trace of her online for months. A chill ran down my spine. What was her name? Rebecca Chen. She was a youth pastor's daughter from Minnesota. But Sarah, there's something else you need to know. What? I don't think David and Claire are working alone. The technical stuff, wiping your phone remotely, creating fake message histories that look real, that takes serious expertise. And the way they coordinate their stories, the fake references they can provide. I think there's a whole network of people doing this. Jessica and I stared at each other in growing horror. We hadn't just stumbled into a catfishing scheme, we'd walked into something much larger and more dangerous. Amanda, where are you now? Hiding. Using a burner phone. Because yesterday, someone broke into my apartment and stole my laptop. Nothing else, just the laptop where I'd been collecting evidence about David. The implications crashed over me like ice water. If they'd gone after Amanda physically, what was to stop them from coming after me next? My phone buzzed with another call before Amanda could say anything else. Unknown number, different from hers. Don't answer, Jessica whispered, but the phone kept ringing with an insistence that made my skin crawl. When it finally stopped, a voicemail notification appeared immediately. Then a text from the same number. Hi Sarah. This is Rebecca Chen. Amanda probably mentioned me. We really should chat. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Amanda's sharp intake of breath was audible through our call. That's impossible. Rebecca's been missing for months. I told you, she vanished completely. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone steady. Someone's using her name. Or they have her phone, Amanda whispered, and the implications of that hung in the air like poison. Jessica was already starting the car. We need to get back to campus. Now. But as we pulled out of the rest stop, I noticed a silver sedan in my side mirror, the same make and model as David's car. It stayed exactly 3 cars behind us as we merged onto the highway. Amanda, are you somewhere safe? I thought so, but... Her voice trailed off, then came back panicked. There's someone at my door. They're knocking but not saying anything. Oh God, Sarah, what if they found me? The line went dead. I tried calling back immediately, but the number went straight to a disconnected message. Jessica pressed harder on the accelerator, but the silver sedan maintained its distance with mechanical precision. This is insane, Jessica muttered, checking the rearview mirror again. This can't be real. People don't just run elaborate criminal networks to catfish college students. But my phone was buzzing with new messages from unknown numbers, each more unsettling than the last. Having fun yet, Sarah? Your friend Jessica drives too fast. Safety first. Face blowing a kiss. Did you know your dorm room is on the 3rd floor? Room 314. Such a pretty view. I screamed, actually screamed, making Jessica swerve slightly before regaining control. What is it? They know where we live. They know our room number. I was scrolling through message after message, each containing details they shouldn't have access to. My class schedule. Jessica's work-study job at the library. The names of my professors. How is that possible? I told David everything over 6 months. Every detail of my life. The scope of my vulnerability was hitting me in waves. He knows my parents' address, my sister's school, my grandfather's nursing home. I trusted him with everything. Another message appeared. Pastor Williams would like to speak with you again. He's very concerned about your mental state after today's episode. Such a shame when young people lose touch with reality. Then a photo, Pastor Williams standing in what looked like his church office, holding up a phone displaying my contact information. They're recruiting people, I breathed. Using today's performance to convince others I'm unstable. Building a network of witnesses to their version of events. Jessica took the next exit without warning, tire squealing. We're not going back to campus. Not until we figure out what's happening. Where are we going? Police station. This has gone way beyond catfishing. But even as she said it, my phone rang again. This time the caller ID made my blood freeze. Dad. I answered with trembling fingers. Hi, Daddy. Sarah Elizabeth Henderson, I just got the most disturbing call from Pastor Williams in Millbrook. He says you had some kind of breakdown at his church today, that you've been harassing a married couple online. The disappointment in his voice was like a knife to my chest. They've gotten to my father, the one person whose opinion mattered most to me. Dad, it's not what it sounds like. He's recommending immediate psychiatric evaluation, sweetheart. He thinks you might be having a crisis of faith complicated by mental health issues. I could hear my mother crying in the background, and I realized the true genius of David's plan. He hadn't just destroyed my credibility, he'd turned my own family against me. Daddy, please listen to me. I can explain everything. Oh honey, we're going to get you help. We're already on our way to your school. The call ended, leaving me staring at the phone in numb shock. In less than 6 hours, David had systematically dismantled my entire support system. But as we pulled into the police station parking lot, I noticed something that made my remaining hope crumble completely. The same silver sedan was already there, parked right next to a police cruiser. David Mitchell stepped out of the passenger side, his face a mask of concerned citizenship. From the driver's side emerged a woman in uniform, a police officer who looked remarkably similar to Claire. They'd been expecting us. The police station's fluorescent lights felt like an interrogation before we'd even walked through the doors. Jessica parked as far from David's car as possible, but I could feel his eyes tracking our every movement through the precinct's glass windows. We can still leave, Jessica whispered, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. Drive to your parents, or mine, figure this out somewhere else. But my phone was already buzzing with another message. Running away won't help, Sarah. Officer Mitchell is very interested in hearing about your recent behavior. Family connections are so valuable, don't you think? Officer Mitchell. Claire's sister, maybe? Cousin? It didn't matter. What mattered was that they positioned someone in law enforcement to control whatever narrative emerged from this encounter. They've thought of everything, I said, watching David through the window as he gestured animatedly to the uniformed woman. Even from a distance, I could see him playing the concerned citizen role to perfection. If we leave now, it looks like we're running from something. If we stay, we walk into another trap, Jessica finished. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, the voice made my stomach drop. Sarah? This is Dr. Patricia Hendricks from the Campus Counseling Center. Your parents asked me to call. They're very worried about you. I'd seen Dr. Hendricks exactly 3 times last semester for completely normal stress management. Now those sessions were apparently being weaponized against me. Dr. Hendricks, I'm fine. Whatever my parents heard. Sweetheart, they received some very detailed information about episodes you've been having. Difficulty distinguishing reality from fantasy, obsessive behavior toward male authority figures, elaborate conspiracy theories. Each word hit like a physical blow. I never told you any of that because none of it is true. Memory gaps are common with this type of psychological break. I've already spoken with the dean about a medical leave of absence. We think it would be best if you came in for evaluation immediately. The news was tightening from every direction. They weren't just destroying my credibility, they were systematically removing my autonomy, my agency, my right to be believed about my own experiences. I'm not having a psychological break, I said as firmly as I could manage. That's exactly what someone experiencing one would say, Sarah. I need you to listen to me very carefully. I hung up, my hands shaking so violently I nearly dropped the phone. Through the police station windows, I could see David pointing in our direction. Officer Mitchell nodded, her expression serious, professional. They were building their case in real time, painting us as unstable individuals who needed to be handled with caution. Sarah, Jessica said quietly, look at your phone. New messages were flooding in, but these weren't from David or his accomplices. These were from numbers I recognized, classmates, people from my home church, even my resident advisor. Heard about your situation. Praying for your recovery. So sorry you're going through this mental health crisis. Here if you need anything. Your parents asked us to keep an eye out for you. Please get help. How are they reaching everyone so fast? I whispered. Jessica was scrolling through her own phone, her face growing paler by the second. Sarah, they've created social media accounts in your name. Look. She showed me her screen, a Facebook profile that looked exactly like mine, but filled with increasingly erratic posts about conspiracy theories, religious persecution, and paranoid rants about being followed. The posts were timestamped over the past several weeks, creating a paper trail of deteriorating mental health. I never wrote any of these, I breathed, but even as I said it, I realized how impossible that would be to prove. The comments, Jessica said, scrolling down. Look at the comments. Dozens of concerned responses from friends, family, church members, all expressing worry about my recent behavior and suggesting I seek professional help. The posts had been crafted to look just unhinged enough to be concerning, but not so over the top that people would question their authenticity. David stepped out of the police station, his face a mask of satisfied concern. He walked directly toward our car, and I realized we were completely, utterly trapped. There was nowhere left to run, and no one left who would believe us. David approached our car with the measured pace of someone who held all the cards. Through the windshield, I could see his expression, not the fake concern he'd worn for the church crowd, but something colder. More calculating. We have to get out, I told Jessica, my voice barely above a whisper. If he corners us here. But Jessica was staring at something over my shoulder, her face white with terror. Sarah, look behind us. I turned to see 2 more cars pulling into the parking lot, a black SUV and another sedan. From the SUV stepped a man I'd never seen before, tall and professional looking, wearing what appeared to be a hospital ID badge. The sedan disgorged a woman in her 50s carrying a clipboard and wearing scrubs. Medical personnel, Jessica breathed. They're bringing medical personnel. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Dr. Morrison is here to help, Sarah. He specializes in involuntary psychiatric holds. Very discreet, very professional. This can go easy or hard, your choice. The walls closed in completely. They weren't just planning to discredit me, they were going to have me committed. Once I was locked in a psychiatric facility, who would believe anything I said? My testimony would be dismissed as the ravings of someone who'd already been declared mentally unstable. Drive, I said urgently. Jessica, drive now. But as she reached for the keys, David stepped directly in front of our car, holding up his hands in a gesture that looked peaceful to any observer but felt like a threat. Officer Mitchell appeared at Jessica's window, tapping on the glass with professional authority. Ladies, I need you to step out of the vehicle, she called through the glass. We just want to talk. Jessica's hands were shaking so badly she couldn't get the keys into the ignition. I can't. Sarah, I can't. Miss Henderson, David called out, his voice carrying across the parking lot with false gentleness. Your parents are very worried about you. Dr. Morrison just wants to make sure you're safe. But I could see the truth in his eyes. This wasn't about safety, this was about silencing me permanently. Once they had me declared incompetent, everything I discovered about their operation would be dismissed as delusions. Other victims like Amanda would lose their only potential witness. Officer Mitchell tapped on the window again, harder this time. This is your last warning. Exit the vehicle now. What if we just tell the truth? Jessica whispered desperately. What if we explain everything, show them? Show them what? I cut her off. They've deleted all our evidence. They've fabricated messages in my name. They have witnesses, medical professionals, law enforcement. Jessica, they built an entire false reality around us. The man with the hospital badge was walking closer, pulling something from his jacket, a syringe, I realized with growing horror. They weren't planning to just commit me. They were going to sedate me first, make me compliant, ensure I couldn't fight back or speak coherently in my own defense. Sarah Henderson, Officer Mitchell's voice had turned stern, authoritative. You're being placed under a psychiatric hold for your own safety and the safety of others. Please exit the vehicle immediately or we'll be forced to extract you. Around us, other police officers were emerging from the station, backup, summoned by their colleague to deal with what they'd been told was an unstable individual having a breakdown in their parking lot. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of absolute defeat. David had orchestrated this perfectly. Every move I'd made had been anticipated, countered, turned against me. He'd used my own faith, my own desire for justice, my own support system as weapons. But as Dr. Morrison approached Jessica's side of the car with that syringe, something inside me shifted. A cold, crystalline clarity that cut through the panic. They'd made one mistake. They'd assumed I'd break. The clarity that cut through my panic wasn't resignation, it was rage. Pure, focused fury that burned away every trace of the helpless victim they tried to make me become. Jessica, I said quietly, my voice steadier than it had been all day, when I say go, start the car and drive straight through that parking space behind David. Sarah, what are you? They made one critical mistake. I was already pulling out my phone, fingers moving with desperate precision. They assumed I'd been working alone. During those frantic hours of research 3 days ago, I hadn't just been gathering evidence about David. I'd been building a network. Amanda wasn't the only victim I'd found, she was just the first to call me back. But my browser history was full of forum posts, support groups, other women who'd shared similar stories of elaborate emotional manipulation. I'd sent the same message to dozens of them. If something happens to me, if I disappear or get discredited, here's everything I know. Now, as Dr. Morrison approached with his syringe and Officer Mitchell prepared to smash our window, I activated the dead man switch I'd set up on my laptop back in the dorm. Sarah Henderson emergency protocol activated, I typed with shaking fingers. Currently being detained by subjects. Initiate exposure plan immediately. Within seconds, my phone started buzzing with confirmations. Not just from Amanda, from women across 3 states who'd been waiting for this moment, who'd been gathering their own evidence, building their own cases. What's happening? Jessica whispered, staring at the flood of notifications. They can silence one crazy college girl, I said, watching as post after post appeared across social media platforms. But they can't silence 27 of us. Screenshots were flooding Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, not just of David's forum posts, but of similar operations run by different men in different cities. The same techniques, the same psychological manipulation, the same systematic destruction of victims' credibility. What had looked like isolated incidents were revealing themselves as part of something much larger. David's confident expression faltered as his own phone began buzzing frantically. Officer Mitchell paused mid-stride, pulling out her device with a frown. Hashtag Church Catfish Conspiracy, I read aloud as the hashtag began trending in real time. Looks like your little network is getting some attention, David. But even as I spoke, I knew this was far from over. David's shock was already transforming back into calculation. He stepped away from our car, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in urgent whispers to someone on the other end. Through the police station windows, I could see more activity, additional personnel arriving, officials in suits who definitely weren't local law enforcement. Whatever organization David was part of, they had resources and connections I was only beginning to understand. Sarah, Jessica said urgently, look at the trending topics. My blood chilled. Right alongside hashtag Church Catfish Conspiracy was hashtag Sarah Henderson Mental Breakdown. They were flooding social media with their own narrative, using bots and fake accounts to amplify their version of events. Professional quality videos were already appearing, concerned testimonies from classmates and church members about my deteriorating mental state. Dr. Morrison had stepped back from our car, but he wasn't leaving. He was on his phone too, and I caught fragments of his conversation, me the enhanced protocol, multiple subjects showing coordinated delusional behavior. They weren't just planning to have me committed anymore. They were preparing to claim that all 27 women sharing their stories were part of some mass hysteria, a shared psychotic episode spreading through social media. Ma'am, Officer Mitchell called out, her tone shifting to something more professional, more careful, we're going to need you to come with us. This situation has escalated beyond local jurisdiction. Federal jurisdiction, I realized with growing dread. They were calling in federal authorities, probably claiming this was some kind of domestic terrorism or coordinated cyber attack. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, impressive, but ultimately futile. You have no idea how deep this goes, Sarah. Last chance to come quietly before we bury all 27 of you. The federal agents arrived faster than should have been possible, which told me everything I needed to know about how deep this conspiracy really went. 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot with military precision, disgorging men and women in dark suits who moved with the coordinated efficiency of people who'd done this before. Sarah, Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible, those aren't regular FBI agents. She was right. Their badges were wrong, too generic, too clean. Real federal agents would have identified their specific agency, shown proper credentials. These people looked like movie props of what civilians thought FBI agents should look like. My phone exploded with new notifications as the story continued spreading online, but now I could see the sophisticated counterattack being launched in real time. Professional news websites were publishing articles about social media hysteria and coordinated delusional episodes. The photos they were using of me had been photoshopped to make me look haggard, unstable. Miss Henderson, one of the fake agents called out, approaching our car with his hand resting casually on something under his jacket. I'm Agent Thompson with the Federal Task Force investigating online coordination of false terrorism claims. We need to speak with you immediately. But as he spoke, my phone buzzed with a message that made my heart skip. Sarah, this is Rebecca Chin. I'm not missing. I've been documenting everything from hiding. Check the live stream I just started. I clicked the link with trembling fingers. Rebecca's face appeared on my screen, broadcasting live from what looked like a secure location. Behind her were whiteboards covered with photos, documents, connection maps showing a network that stretched across multiple states. I've been tracking this operation for 8 months, Rebecca was saying to what I could see was already thousands of viewers. What happened to Sarah Henderson today is the same protocol they've used on dozens of women. But here's what they don't want you to know, this isn't just about catfishing. She held up a document I couldn't quite read from the phone screen. This is a government contract for social media psychological manipulation research. David Mitchell and his network aren't just sadistic criminals, they're being paid to perfect techniques for discrediting specific types of people. The fake agent Thompson's expression shifted from professional concern to something much colder. He gestured to his colleagues, who began spreading out around our car in a tactical formation. The goal isn't just to hurt religious women, Rebecca continued on the stream. It's to develop scalable methods for destroying the credibility of anyone who challenges official narratives. Whistleblowers, activists, journalists, they're using Christian college students as test subjects for techniques they plan to deploy against political dissidents. My blood turned to ice as the implications sank in. This wasn't just personal cruelty, it was a beta test for something much more sinister. Jessica grabbed my arm. Sarah, look at the viewer count. The live stream had exploded to over 50,000 viewers in just minutes. Comments were flooding in from all over the world, people sharing their own stories of systematic discrediting campaigns. The hashtag had morphed into something bigger than any of us had anticipated. Miss Henderson, Agent Thompson called again, his patience clearly wearing thin. You need to exit the vehicle now. This has become a matter of national security. But even as he spoke, I could see doubt creeping into the expressions of the local police officers. They were watching their phones too, seeing the live stream, reading the rapidly accumulating evidence. Whatever they'd been told about dealing with an unstable college student wasn't matching what they were witnessing unfold online. David stepped closer to Agent Thompson, and I caught fragments of their urgent whispered conversation. Containment protocol failing, too much exposure, need to accelerate timeline. Rebecca's voice came through my phone speaker clearly enough for Jessica to hear. If anything happens to Sarah Henderson or any of the other women speaking out today, you'll know exactly who's responsible. This entire operation is being recorded and distributed to secure servers in multiple countries. The fake agents exchanged glances that told me we'd crossed some kind of threshold. Whatever they'd planned to do quietly was no longer an option. Agent Thompson reached for his radio, and I realized we had maybe seconds before the situation escalated beyond any hope of survival. That's when the real FBI arrived. 3 unmarked cars screamed into the parking lot with sirens blaring, and I knew immediately these were legitimate federal agents. Their movements were different, their badges authentic, their entire presence radiating actual authority rather than the polished facade of Thompson's team. Nobody move. The lead agent's voice cut across the parking lot like a whip crack. This is Special Agent Maria Santos, FBI Cybercrimes Division. Everyone step away from the vehicle. Thompson and his fake team froze, their hands moving instinctively toward weapons they apparently weren't authorized to draw in broad daylight. The local police officers looked confused, caught between competing claims of federal authority. Agent Thompson, Santos called out, her weapon drawn but pointed downward. Show me your credentials. Slowly. This is our operation, Thompson replied, but I could hear uncertainty creeping into his voice. We have jurisdiction. No, you don't. Santos was walking closer, her team flanking the fake agents with professional precision. Because Agent Thompson doesn't exist. Neither does your task force. My phone was still streaming Rebecca's broadcast, and I could see the viewer count climbing past 100,000. Comments were flooding in from around the world, journalists, lawyers, activists, even government officials demanding answers about what was happening in this small town parking lot. Sarah, Santos called out without taking her eyes off Thompson, you and your friend can exit the vehicle now. You're under federal protection. But as Jessica and I climbed out of the car on shaking legs, David made his final play. He grabbed Officer Mitchell's service weapon with lightning speed, his mask of concerned citizen finally dropping completely. Nobody moves, he screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. This whole thing ends right here. The parking lot exploded into chaos. Real federal agents took cover behind vehicles, local police scattered, and Dr. Morrison dropped his syringe as he dove behind a concrete barrier. But David wasn't pointing the gun at any of them. He was pointing it directly at me. 6 months, he shouted, his face twisted with rage. 6 months of playing your pathetic little Christian girl games, and you think you can destroy everything we built? David, put the weapon down, Agent Santos commanded, but he was beyond listening now. You want to know the truth, Sarah? You want to know why we picked you? His laugh was sharp, brittle. Because you were perfect. So trusting, so desperate to believe in love and God's plan. You made it so easy. But even as he spoke, I could see his hands shaking. The careful psychological manipulator was gone, replaced by someone who'd watched months of meticulous planning crumble in a single afternoon. The cameras are still rolling, David, I said quietly, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. The whole world is watching you prove everything we said about you. His eyes flicked to my phone, still broadcasting Rebecca's stream, then to the dozen other phones recording from behind various cars. Every word he spoke was being heard by hundreds of thousands of people, preserved forever as evidence of his guilt. It doesn't matter, he said, but his voice was breaking. Without you, they can't prove a bigger connection. They can't trace it back to. The gunshot that rang out wasn't from David's weapon. Agent Santos had taken him down with a single precise shot to his shoulder, sending him crashing to the asphalt as the stolen police gun skittered harmlessly across the parking lot. David Mitchell, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, identity theft, and about 40 other federal crimes I'll let the lawyers enumerate, Santos announced as her team moved in to secure the scene. As the paramedics worked on David's shoulder and the fake federal agents were led away in handcuffs, I looked around at the chaos of the parking lot, overturned evidence of a conspiracy that had finally been dragged into the light. My phone buzzed with a text from my father, coming to get you, sweetheart. Saw the news. So proud of how brave you've been. For the first time in hours, I smiled.